So welcome everyone to tonight's talk at Mountain Cloud. Welcome in this week following our spring session. Whether you were here or not last week, in the Zendo or in the cloud, we're sitting in the wake of that all-pervading silence. Just one sitting. The session was titled The Wellspring of Not Knowing, a name for this practice, the wellspring of zazen, and an invitation. Not just to drink from the well, but to be what we truly are. Hogen calls it practice enlightenment, practicing realizing. Coming home to your native ground, coming home and discovering it again and again for the first time. So last night, Abby offered the practice sharing for our Wisdom Wednesday gathering. And she titled her offering, We Are the River. Drawing on Thich Nhat Hanh, Abby spoke to our interbeing with the earth, with one another, with all beings. The climate crisis and its resolution, however that may come, is up to us. As Thich Nhat Hanh put it, we inter-are. The title of Abby's short talk brought to mind a koan that shines with the beauty of this thoroughgoing oneness and the empty, infinite boundlessness that makes it possible, that makes it so. Not just crossing the river, as the tradition says, going to the other shore. You are that. We are the river. The koan is Case 51 in the Book of Equanimity, or Shoyoroku. It's called Hogen's Boat or Land. For tonight, I'd like to take this up and along the way, revisit some of the themes from last week's session. So here is the case. Hogen, Master Hogen, asked senior monk Kaku, "Did you come by boat or by land?" Kaku said, "By boat." Hogen said, "Where is the boat?" Kaku said, "The boat is on the river." After Kaku had withdrawn, Hogen asked a monk nearby, "You tell me, did that monk who was just here have the eye or not?" So Hogen, or Fayan, came to be known, his Dharma name, the great seeing eye, or Dharma eye of great clarity. He's one of the five masters who a school of Zen comes from. So these five schools of Chan. Hogen was born 77 years after Joshu, one overlapping generation later. Yamada Kon Roshi, the father of our current abbot, Rion Roshi, teacher of our teacher. Kon Roshi had a great affinity for Hogen, so direct and clear. It's not known if the kaku in this case was a Dharma heir of Joshu's, or possibly the kaku of Roya, who also appears in the final case, case 100 of the Book of Serenity, where that kaku says, the essential state is pure and clear. How are mountains, rivers, and the great earth produced at once? Beautiful way to end this collection. How are they? Mountains, rivers, the great earth, right now. Well, either way, this kaku is a senior monk in this case, and deeply seasoned. Early on in the sesshin, our second talk, we looked into the story of Hogen's awakening. It's in case 20 of this collection, Shodaroku. He's wandering on pilgrimage with two other monks. They arrive at Jizo's temple in the middle of a snowstorm, needing a place to stay. And Jizo, this master, meets Hogen at the gate. What brings you here? I'm wandering about on pilgrimage, says Hogen. And Jizo asks, what is pilgrimage? Hogen says, I don't know. And Jizo responds, not knowing is most intimate. It's a famous response. Hogen's relative, I don't know. Very open. But still somehow in the world of this knowing and not knowing, his I don't know just suddenly flips into the absolute. This relative, suddenly the fact. Not knowing is most intimate. Not an orientation to reality, but what he is. In effect, Hogen says, I don't know. And Jizo says, that's it. As I mentioned in that other talk, there's a master who comments on this and says, Jizo goes right up and bumps him off. He's gone. His separate self is gone. Domyo Burke, she's the guiding teacher at Brightway Zen. She wrote a piece on the practice of not knowing several years ago. I think it was back in, 2017. And already, of course, a sense at large of the polycrisis in our world. She had worked as a wildlife biologist until becoming a full-time practitioner and then teacher. She starts by taking up Hogen's realization in this post, sort of like a short essay. This not knowing is most intimate. And here's a little of what she writes. Hogen awakens at Master Jizo's comment, not because he suddenly realizes why he's been wandering so long and practicing hard, and not because he finally conceives of what he's been searching for. Rather, he momentarily drops all of his preconceived notions, and at that moment, there is only his body-mind, Master Jizo's compassion, the Buddha way, the sandals on his feet, the cicadas buzzing in the trees. There, in his direct experience of his life, the meaning of it all becomes clear without conception, definition, description, or knowing of any kind. Gomyo Burke then poses the question, how can not knowing be the ground for effective action? She goes on, how can this kind of thoughtless, immediate not knowing be useful when you're facing a neo-Nazi, when you need to decide how to resist the environmental destruction and degradation that's threatening all life on this planet, when you have to find a way to defend democracy or truth or compassion, or when you need to claw your way out of a hole of suffering in your personal life. The key, she writes, is that not knowing isn't clinging to a state of indecision or ignorance. It's not a fixed position you take. Instead, it's a way you engage the next moment, fresh, open, unbiased. You let go of clinging to fixed views of your sense of knowing. It's grounded in reality because in reality, you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know for sure what's going to work. You don't know the person standing in front of you, at least not completely and maybe hardly at all. You don't know who you are, as if you could sum yourself up in a sentence or paragraph. You practice not knowing in this very moment, not in the abstract. That's practice. Or as Dogen put it, practice realization. Not the content of understanding, however much that may inform our action, but the fact of who you are. As Bodhidharma put it, vast and void, no separation. Who you are and what you are. I don't know. That's it. If only we could see this exactly as you are. Nothing extra, nothing lacking. I'm struggling. That's it. Troubled in these troubled times. Most intimate. Grateful for a moment's peace. Just that. Hogen's story goes on. He inherits Jiso's Dharma, becomes abbot of an established monastery. There's a record of his teaching, quite nice to have, longer than for some. And I'd like to share just a few bits of it. Here's one. A monk asked Hogen, what was the style of the ancient Buddhas? Hogen said, where can it not be completely seen? Ancient. A monk asked, what is a true patch of earth? Hogen said, not a single patch of earth is true. This groundless ground reminds me of a student who was sitting, earnestly sitting with Mu, and said it's like sitting on a trap door. Makes you vigilant. That door and the floor is wide open. And one more passage from the record. It says, there's a story that in former times a Zen monk lived alone in a cottage. Above his door, he wrote the word mind. Could have written moo. Above his window, he wrote the word mind. And on his wall, he wrote the word mind. Zen Master Hogen said, above his door, he should have written door. Above his window, he should have written window. And on his wall, he should have written the word wall. There's one version of this account that has Kaku there with Hogen, and Hogen asks him about this exchange. And the record says, Kaku answered Hogen genuinely. A wall is a wall, a window, a door, a door. Sometimes in this practice, especially in the early koans, those miscellaneous koans, right after coming through mu, however that opens, however it falls, it's like a baby being born into the world with a film on your eyes, you know? And it just, oh, look at that, look at that, look at that. Door, wall, mat. Kon Roshi said of Hogen, out of deep appreciation, there is absolutely no difference between the worldly Dharma and the Buddhist Dharma. The relative and the absolute. One fact. So back to this encounter, case 51. Crossing the river, Kaku arrives and meets Hogen. In the original version, the koan is announced, as everyone in this collection is, with one word: attention, or presenting. If we actually just get that word, you get the whole koan. Attention. Practicing, realizing. Senior monk Kaku arrives, and Hogen asks, did you come by boat or by land? Kaku says, by boat. A simple exchange, direct, transparent. But Hogen checks further. Where is the boat? And Kaku says, the boat is on the river. The boat is on the river. Hear just one word as it truly is, and there is the boat. And the beauty of our lives, even as they are, just as they are. The boat is on the river. Puts everything to rest. Somehow this simple phrase conveys the whole, beyond explaining, most intimate. Like when we take up the koan mu, does a dog have Buddha nature or not? just the question is presenting what the monk is asking, actually. Each sound. What is a dog? Does a dog? In his sayings to this case, the editor, Master Bansho, praises Kaku's answer. Bansho writes, he speaks profoundly of true reality and skillfully expounds the essentials of the Dharma. The boat is on the river. It doesn't just expound reality in the sense that we might think. Every word, each one, gives rise to it. This one transparency or one absolute capacity, this radiance that no amount of delusion can divide. I ran into a practitioner arriving tonight as I was, who came to the sesshin and has stayed on. How are you? Everything is taking care of itself. Things do that. The boat is on the river. Dogen has a line describing what you might call the essentials of the Dharma, Bansho's essentials. The eyes are horizontal and the nose is vertical. Just flashed on somebody coming to this for the first time, without having really sat, and you hear that. How strange. Sort of like my own first encounter with my teacher when he said, what brings you here? I want to be my true self. How could we not? And yet. So some years ago, our abbot, Ryon Roshi, shared a story that he was just lying on the bed in his parents' home, the bed where his father had died, and they had a zendo there, so he was just resting. And this phrase came up, the eyes are horizontal, the nose is vertical. I had some experience, Ryon Roshi said. Things as they are, precise, total equality, and boundless. Boundless as in empty of any fixity, no edge, no seam. The boat is on the river. Kaku leaves, and Hogen turns to a monk, probably his attendant, who's standing nearby. You tell me, did that monk who was here just now have the eye or not? The eye, E-Y-E. Did he? Is that the question? At the end of his commentary to this case, Master Wanshi says, where are the monk's eyes? Under his eyebrows. In one of the talks last week, we touched on Dogen's Shobo Ginzo essay called The Bodhisattva's Four Methods of Guidance. The first method of those four is giving. Dogen writes, to launch a boat or build a bridge is an act of giving. If you study giving closely, you see that to accept a body and to give up a body are both giving. To leave flowers to the wind, to leave birds to the seasons are also acts of giving. Where is the boat? The boat is on the river. Acts of giving. Maybe that has something to do with the beauty. Or maybe it's simply the indivisible reality. Bancho's introduction to the case ends with the line, if you suddenly become completely one, can you articulate delusion and enlightenment or not? Suddenly, completely one. Suddenly, just this. Beyond the dynamism of our unmitigated interdependence, even that, beyond any rubric or measure, suddenly whole, nothing outside it. Can you distinguish, divide, find any trace of separation? I remember Ryon Roshi some time ago speaking to this case and simply saying, there is no such thing as enlightenment, but the boat is on the river. Hogen Ikaku, late 17th to 18th century monk, master artist. He's got a painting titled Three Blind Men Crossing a Bridge. Or we would say, three blind people. He, she, they. And the bridge in the painting is a tree branch extending over a deep ravine. The figures, in this case these three figures, feel their way along, each with a cane stretched out to help navigate the narrow bridge. And in the painting, the branch ends midair. There's just, you can see the cliff on the other side, but they're walking out and it doesn't connect. Much like our concepts when trying to reach the other shore of awakening. That other shore, what if it's right here? And what if true blindness drops us right into it? What if this not knowing is our birthright? Nothing to fix, nowhere to go. You are the river. On the way, on the river, in the midst, right here. In the description for tonight's talk, swiftly rendered this morning thanks to Abby's prompt, I envisioned revisiting themes from the sesshin, the wellspring of zazen, the intimacy of not knowing, the peace that passes all understanding. Revisiting, but nowhere to go. All of it funnels into this breath by breath practice. Each breath swallows everything. And each breath brings everything to life. A few years ago, a student came with his koan, the exchange between Kaku and Hogen. The boat is on the river had shown up as with each in-breath born with each exhale. Death. Peace beyond understanding in the midst. So I'd like to close tonight with a poem by Mary Oliver that just came into view with this. She names it Swan. Did you see it drifting all night on the black river? Did you see it in the morning, rising into the silvery air, an armful of white blossoms, a perfect commotion of silk and linen as it leaned into the bondage of its wings? A snowbank, a bank of lilies biting the air with its black beak. Did you hear it? Fluting and whistling, a shrill, dark music like the rain pelting the trees, like a waterfall knifing down the black edges. And did you see it, finally, just under the clouds? A white cross streaming across the sky, its feet like black leaves, its wings like the stretching light of the river. And did you feel it in your heart, how it pertained to everything? And have you too finally figured out what beauty is for? And have you changed your life? The boat is on the river. Your life, our life, this life. Let's offer it without reserve. The wellspring of open hearts and empty hands.